I want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for all of the continued support. And I am done. Okay, so I just finished up reading Bookshops Bonedust. This is the prequel story to Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and I want to give you my unedited thoughts upon finishing this book, which was just right now. So, yeah, this is not good to me. This did not fulfill anything that I was looking for from this story, and in my opinion, a far cry from what made the first one so good. And I'm going to ultimately have to give this one a 2 out of 5, meaning I did not like it. I didn't hate it, but I certainly did not like it. And I didn't really like much of anything about it, pretty much from the get-go. You know, the story in Legends and Lattes, which was a surprise, probably like the biggest surprise hit of last year. I mean, it came out of nowhere. I mean, the author himself, Travis Baldree, is an audiobook narrator, and I don't think he's ever written a book before. Certainly not one that, you know, was out there published. And he did it, I believe, through like a competition on like a write a book within a month kind of thing. I don't know the exact details, but he put it out there just on a whim. And he like commissioned some artwork, and he was hoping that he would sell enough to just get his money back from the artwork. But it blew up. I want to say it was like nominated for a Hugo or something like that. I mean, it really just was big. And I read it and I liked it. And I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, I think. And yeah, it just was so different than what I normally read. It was just a nice, you know, and this word comes up all the time with this, but it's perfectly stated. But it's a nice, cozy, fantasy story that you just read in the morning and feel good about yourself, and a nice palate cleanser between the darker stories that I normally read. Now, the story in Legends of Latte is about this orc who retires from the mercenary life to open up a coffee shop in a city that has never heard of coffee before. It's like this cute little story. It's satisfying for a few reasons. Namely, you get invested in this character finding their new life passion, and you get sucked into the slow progression of seeing this coffee shop go from like this nothingness to like the biggest hit in the city. And you get to read about the character slowly introducing more modern day items that we all know about and that we all know and love to a people that have never heard of them before. You know, it's cozy, it's relaxing, it feels familiar. But in this one, in Bookshops Bonedust, all the things that made that first one fun to read were gone for me. Now, it's a prequel, so you already know where the main character ends up. And while this is a problem I have with a lot of prequel stories, it was notable here more so than usual. A lot of times in prequels, you get to see the backstories of a bunch of different characters, how they met, something important, especially in like these larger like epic fantasy type things. It feels like you get a lot of needed background. But you didn't need the background here because you kind of got everything you needed in the first book. You know, all you needed to know to enjoy that first book was that an orc is retiring from a hard life of violence and want to move into their next stage of life. There's nothing left to be said. But, you know, the problem in this one is that there's no character development here. There's nothing left to be done. It's about the character convalescing in a town after having been injured in a fight and helping a bookshop owner get their shop back up into popularity. There's several problems with this. First is a large portion of the book is about this main character falling in love with reading for the first time. But we haven't read the books that the character has read, so you just have to take their word for it. You know, it's like this bookshop setting is just preaching to the choir, and that's not fun. You know, something that made Legends and Lattes so successful was, you know, very few of the people that were reading that book were coffee connoisseurs. You know, you might like coffee. I like coffee. You might like pastries, but, you know, we're not baristas. You know, we're not pastry chefs. And so finding out more subtle nuances to this and learning more about it on something that we already know a little bit about. We know what coffee tastes like. You know, we know what a scone tastes like. And, you know, but it felt warm and fuzzy and nice. Reading about a character, finding out about like, oh, what's a mystery story? Oh, wow, that's what a mystery story is? You know, mind blown. It's like, really? Or, you know, it'll read a couple pages to this book and you're finding out this character's falling in love with it. But we haven't read the book. We don't know anything about that. It feels so dull on that key part of the the character and finding out about a passion of theirs. You don't get to share it. It just, again, it feels like preaching to the choir. This ultimately felt like an entire book of filler that never really went anywhere. I mean, the plot was all over the place, and it just meanders. Now, I'm going to keep relating to the first book. I almost feel like this is here's why this is worse than the first. But in the first one, we have a very set plot. We know what's going to happen. It's sold to us in the beginning of the story, and we end up getting what is promised to us. You have this orc who has this light magical element here that I don't want to ruin anything, so there's a little bit of a light mystery there. But they tell you on the get-go they want to start this coffee shop. Here, what's going on? Are you trying to recover? Are you trying to create a book story that is not going to end up being relevant in future stories? It's not even your store. There's, more violence in this. There's there's antagonists. It's like, what is going on here? How does this all fit together? And it ultimately doesn't for me. There's no central thing here to this story that brings everything together like in the first one. The characters themselves, it felt like, didn't have a lot of depth to them. And the fact that you already know that none of these side characters are going to show up later in the series, it just ruined any aspect of caring about them in the slightest. I didn't care about them. And they didn't feel as inventive as the first book. It felt so obvious and shallow and surface level on all of these characters besides Viv, the main orcus. Is that what you call a female orc? But it just felt like you're here just to try to copy what was from the first book, but missing it in so many regards. Now, there was a romance subplot here. There was a romance subplot in the original book as well. In the original book, it slowly built up over time. In fact, you don't even know that there's a romance story actually budding here, because it felt like a lot of romance stories that are true to life. A lot of times you don't go into a relationship knowing that it's going to be a relationship. You become friends with somebody, you enjoy their companionship, you find out that you're closer to them than many other people, and a romance buds, and it turns into something that's very important to both of them. Not so in this one. In this one, it's like the character meets this other person, and you already know that this character is not going to end up with this person long term because they're not in the next book. And it just instantly is a character quite literally going, you know what, I like you. Let's make this happen. And it just, while that obviously does happen at times in real life, that's not an interesting romance plot. It just felt like so heavy-handed and not super realistic or fun to read about. It felt like a hookup instead of something that you felt good about for the characters. I'm going to keep telling about bad things that I liked about this book. The book literally switches right around the halfway point, and it almost feels like two completely different books. So like the first half of this book is this cozy slice of life story that, again, I didn't like as much as the first one. The second half of the book is this more like high stakes adventure. But I was never really sold on the high stakes part that it wanted me to feel. It just felt kind of dull. Why? Why go down that path? I felt like Travis Baldree had found what made him successful in the first book, and he said, let me try to copy that for this other book, but I can't copy it exactly because I'm going to get called out for being a copycat, so let me throw in some more traditional fantasy elements to this. But you don't have to do that. I mean, cozy fantasy stories, there's nothing new. I mean, cozy fantasy has been around for a long time, and they don't have to have these higher stakes things to make them fun and interesting. And you can make multiple cozy stories within the same universe while making them different and substantially different. And it's just not, it felt like it missed the mark on both regards. It either should have gone more into the cozy or totally did a different thing. And it didn't do either of those things and ultimately kind of failed in both regards. The epilogue to this story was very strange to me. I didn't quite understand the need for it. It was a flash forward, to after Legends and Lattes. I've never heard of this kind of thing happening before. So you got Legends and Lattes, you got this prequel story that we're hearing now, and the epilogue is after that original one. What? So you can't read this one first. You have to read it in the opposite order. So I don't know if the author knows this, but like there's a big debate a lot in fantasy about what order you should read books. A lot of people think that you should read books in the chronological order of the timeline of those books. It makes sense, right? You want to hear that progression as it goes along. You can't do that here. You have to read it as this jumble of reading the first one and then reading the prequel. And it didn't feel like it did anything. It felt meaningless other than to just advertise to the world that we're going to get a third book after the first one. It felt strange, to say the least, and just like a just big fat advertisement. And I did not like that. I didn't like much of anything here. I felt like the writing was a little more pedestrian. You know, it felt like it had a lot of things in it that I didn't like, not just in terms of the prose itself, which I'm not in love with. Again, I don't have to be in love with prose. I say it again, I didn't say this in this video, but I say it in a lot of my videos. I don't need you to have great prose for me to enjoy a story at all. I can love stories that have pretty bad prose. And this isn't atrocious, but it certainly didn't blow me out of the water. And it felt like a little bit on the weaker side of average of the fantasy books that I read. But it was a lot of the character developments felt more pedestrian too. The choices that the author made in terms of characters was off. It's like every character needed to have a new aspect to their life that they're going to find out about, this new passion and this new love of theirs. It felt like it was trying to be too perfect. There was no grittiness to it. There was nobody that made, trying to be a better person and failing. It was all these people that had these epiphanies about what the real meaning of life is and moving from there. It was too neat. And I didn't like that. I didn't like anything here. Again, I didn't hate it. And ultimately, I think a lot of people are going to love this. My guess is that almost everybody that read the first book is going to like this one as well, because it does hold a lot of the same things true. I'm picky sometimes. I like what I like, and I don't like what I don't like. And I'm not going to hide that opinion. But don't let me sway you off this. If you read Legends and Lattes and you liked it, you are probably going to like this one as well. If you don't like cozy fantasy stories, I don't think you'll really like either of these. But if you're looking for something that's a little bit more like a palate cleanser, I hesitate to say like I recommend this, but I think Legends and Latte is a great one. So, if you need that kind of story, if you do those kind of things, like I did that with Discworld for a long time. I got through the Discworld books. I'm sad that I did. Maybe I'll go back and reread them. But it was nice for me to read a few really heavy fantasy stories and then read a nice little cozy Discworld book that made me smile, made me laugh, made me kind of look at a deeper aspect of something that I never would from almost like a more philosophical standpoint. It felt smart. It was nice. I could sit in the morning, drink my coffee, and smile at the beautiful world that is around me and the absurdity of it at times. And if you need one of those stories, then Legends and Latte is a good one. And if you like Legends and Lattes, then go read this one as well. And give it a shot. Because, most people are going to like it. Not me. So I don't really have a lot more to say about this. I'm sad that I didn't like it. I feel bad because the author gave me this book to review, and I'm not giving it a good review. It's just how it is sometimes with art. It doesn't work for everybody. So I'm going to wrap it up there. That's it for me. And as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons. Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, Gregory, Jonathan, My Book is Lit, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, Orthodoxia, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sydney Baker, Tahir, Anna, Andra, Angelo, Blair, Brock, Evan, Fanixan, Harry B, Joe, Kat Mick, Maria, Michael Sugarman, Sky, TW57, Wacky, and Zion. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.